Last night was one of those moments where your entire life feels like it shifts in a single sentence. I'm John, 29, and if you'd told me yesterday morning that by midnight I'd be sitting alone in a restaurant, staring at an empty chair across from me while strangers snickered, I would have laughed. My girlfriend of almost 2 years, Emily, had invited me out to dinner with her friends at this fancy rooftop place downtown. I thought it was a good sign. She'd never really been into mixing me with her friend group, but lately she'd been talking about taking the next step, whatever that meant. I put on a button down, even ironed it, which is rare for me, and felt pretty good about the night. At first, dinner seemed normal. Everyone was talking, laughing, sipping cocktails. Emily was telling some story about work, and I was just sitting back, smiling, enjoying the vibe. Then one of her friends made a joke about couples that were matching outfits and how clingy that is. Emily rolled her eyes, turned to me, and said, "See, this is why I told you not to wear that shirt. Honestly, you're embarrassing to be seen with sometimes." She said it loud enough for the whole table to hear. Everyone chuckled, awkwardly, but she just smirked and took another sip of wine. My ears went hot. I laughed it off because what else do you do when your girlfriend publicly calls you embarrassing? It didn't stop there. The rest of the night, she kept throwing these little barbs, half joking, but with that sting that makes you wonder how much of it is true. I'd make a comment, and she'd say something like, "Wow, you really don't get subtlety, do you?" And her friends would laugh. It was like I was the punchline for the entire table. My chest felt tight, but I kept quiet, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she was just showing off for her friends. I didn't want to make a scene. Then came the moment I'll never forget. The check arrived, $280, and before I could even reach for it, Emily stood up, tossed her napkin onto the table, and said, loud enough that heads turned at nearby tables, "This is over. Pay for dinner, loser." Then she walked out, holding another guy's hand. I recognized him, some guy she'd mentioned from her gym. Everyone at the table went dead silent. Then a few people actually laughed. Laughed. My girlfriend had just dumped me publicly, humiliated me, and walked out with someone else, and I was sitting there like an idiot, heart pounding in my ears. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, let them all look at me, finished the last sip of my drink, and calmly paid the bill. My hands were shaking when I put my card down, but I forced myself to stay quiet. The waiter gave me this pitying look, which somehow felt worse than the laughter. When I got to my car, I just sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. I wasn't even sad yet. I was just numb, like my brain hadn't caught up to what had happened. When I finally got home, I expected silence. Instead, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 22 missed calls from Emily, texts blowing up my screen. The last one said, "We need to talk." It's not what it looks like. I just stared at it, reading it over and over. Not what it looks like. She held another guy's hand and called me a loser in front of everyone. What exactly am I supposed to think? I didn't respond. I put my phone face down and went to bed, though I didn't sleep much. This morning, I woke up to more messages. Some from Emily, some from my mom. Even my sister had texted me asking what I did to make Emily so upset. Apparently, Emily had already gotten ahead of the story and told everyone that I overreacted to a harmless joke and stormed off dramatically. I hadn't even said a word, but sure, now I'm the villain. My mom's message said something like, "Relationships take work, John. Don't throw this away over pride." That's when it really hit me. It wasn't just Emily who thought she could treat me this way. My own family was taking her side without even asking me what happened. I could feel the anger start to bubble under the numbness, slow and hot. For the first time since last night, I felt awake. And that's when the plan started forming in my head. Not fully, not yet, but I knew I wasn't going to let this slide. When I woke up that morning, the house felt too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold by the time I finished staring at my phone. 22 missed calls, 14 unread texts, 2 voicemails, and now a new group chat notification from my family, where Emily had apparently dropped her side of the story first thing this morning. I opened the chat and scrolled. Emily, "Hey guys, John and I had a little fight last night. He's probably not going to tell you, but I wanted you to know I still care about him and want to work through this. Mom, we love you, Emily. You two are so good together. Don't give up on him." Emily, "I won't. I know he's been stressed. He just needs to grow up a little." My sister, Laura, "Yeah, John always overthinks things. Give him space, he'll come around." My jaw clenched so hard I thought I might crack a tooth. There was not a single word about what actually happened. Not one person asked if I was okay. Not one person wondered why their son, their brother, had gone completely silent after being humiliated in public. The entire narrative had already been flipped. Emily, the concerned girlfriend, me, the irrational child. I typed out a reply 3 times and deleted it each time. What was I even supposed to say? Actually, Mom, Emily called me a loser in front of strangers and walked out with another guy? No one was going to believe me. Emily was charming, polished, the type who could make a room light up just by walking in. And me? I was the quiet one, the guy who kept his head down at family dinners and preferred small talk with the dog over small talk with the relatives. Instead of answering, I put my phone down and forced myself to go through the motions of a normal morning. Shower, clothes, keys, work. But even at the office, it followed me like a shadow. Emily's texts pinged every hour. John, please answer. I didn't mean what I said. Can we talk tonight? Please. Babe, I was drunk. You know I get mouthy when I drink. By noon, she'd escalated. If you won't answer me, I'm coming over. Your mom said I could stop by after work. Don't be petty. We need to fix this. And then, the kicker. I told my parents we're working it out. Don't make me look stupid. I sat back in my chair, staring at that last one. This wasn't an apology, it was a command. Don't embarrass me. Don't make me look bad. Not a single word about how I felt sitting there with 20 pairs of eyes on me as she called me a loser. That night, she actually showed up. I didn't answer the door, but I heard her car pull into the driveway and her heels clicking on the front steps. Then came the knock, light at first, then harder. John, open the door. This is ridiculous. I stayed quiet, sitting on the couch in the dark. She knocked again, then called my name louder. I know you're in there. Your truck's outside. After a long pause, her voice softened. Baby, please. I messed up. I'm sorry. You know I love you. I almost broke then. Almost. Because a part of me still wanted to believe she was the girl I'd started dating 2 years ago. The girl who used to sit on the porch with me on summer nights and talk about traveling. The girl who once drove across town at midnight just to bring me soup when I was sick. But I stayed still, staring at the floor until I heard her footsteps retreat and her car pull away. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated Emily. 2 days later, my mom called me out of the blue. John, she said, her voice tight. Why are you punishing Emily like this? She's been trying to apologize. I took a deep breath, gripping the phone. Did she tell you what happened? She said you got upset over a harmless joke and stormed off. John, relationships aren't perfect. You can't just shut her out over one mistake. One mistake, I said, my voice sharp for the first time. Mom, she humiliated me in front of a whole table of people and walked out holding another guy's hand. Silence. Then Mom sighed, the way she does when she thinks I'm being dramatic. John, are you sure you didn't misinterpret that? Emily said he was just a friend walking her to her car. You know how you get when you feel disrespected. There it was, the old family narrative. Sensitive John. Overreacting John. The one who feels disrespected over everything. Mom, I said, my voice low now. I was there. I saw it. She called me a loser and left me with a $280 bill. That's not a joke. Mom didn't answer right away, and when she did, her tone was clipped. Well, maybe you two just need a little break to cool off. But don't drag this out. You're not getting any younger, John. That was the end of the call. After that, it was like the floodgates opened. Laura texted me, telling me I was throwing away a good thing. My cousin even called to say Emily had confided in her about how hard this was for her. The family group chat kept blowing up with memes and casual jokes that always seemed to circle back to me. Laura, we all know how stubborn you are. John, just call her. Mom, you two are perfect together. Don't let pride ruin this. Emily, I'm coming over Friday. I'll bring your favorite takeout. Please talk to me. By Friday, I was exhausted from ignoring everyone. So when she showed up again, I opened the door. Emily stood there holding a bag from my favorite burger place, smiling like nothing had happened. Hey, stranger, she said softly. I let her in, but I didn't smile back. She set the food down on the counter and tried to hug me, but I stepped back. We need to talk, I said. Good, she said quickly, because I've been dying to explain. It wasn't what it looked like. I was just. No, I cut her off. You were cruel. You embarrassed me in front of your friends and then walked out with another guy. That's not a misunderstanding. Her smile faltered, and for a moment, I saw something cold flicker in her eyes. John, she said, her tone suddenly sharper. You can't keep holding this over my head forever. I said I was sorry. You're acting like a child. And there it was again, the switch. From contrite girlfriend to scolding teacher. I stood there, my hands curling into fists at my sides, feeling something inside me harden. She grabbed the takeout bag and shoved it toward me. Eat something. Maybe you'll feel better. I didn't take it. She stared at me for a long moment, then rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath, and left, slamming the door behind her. I stood there in the quiet house, heart pounding. The burger bag sat on the counter, untouched. I felt something click into place inside me, a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in days. This wasn't about fixing anything anymore. This was about me. About deciding, finally, that I wasn't going to let someone, not Emily, not my mom, not anyone, make me feel small in my own life. And as much as I hated to admit it, a part of me started to feel calm. Calm, but not done. The weekend after Emily slammed my door, I tried to breathe and move on with my life. I worked late, went to the gym, did anything I could to stay busy and avoid staring at my phone. I thought maybe if I gave it time, things would cool off. Maybe even my family would stop pushing. That illusion shattered by Tuesday. I came home from work to find my mom's car in the driveway. My stomach sank immediately. I hadn't told her to come over, and she rarely stopped by unannounced. When I stepped inside, the first thing I saw was Emily, sitting on my couch like she owned the place. Mom was beside her, sipping tea out of my mug, looking at me with that disappointed mother expression I'd known since I was 5 years old. What is this? I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. An intervention, Mom said calmly, as if that explained everything. You two need to talk like adults. I looked at Emily. She was sitting cross-legged, perfectly put together, wearing that sweater I used to love on her. Like this was some casual coffee date, and not the aftermath of her humiliating me in public. You invited her here? I asked my mom. John, she's been miserable. She's tried to apologize, but you won't let her. It's not fair to punish someone for a mistake forever. I turned to Emily. You called me a loser in front of your friends and left with another guy. That's not just a mistake. That's overreaction, she cut in smoothly. John, it was a joke. I grabbed his hand because I was upset and didn't want to cry in front of everyone. It wasn't romantic. You walked out with him, I said, my voice rising. Because you embarrassed me by storming off, she snapped, her mask slipping. Do you know how childish you looked, sitting there sulking? My friends were mortified. I blinked at her. Mortified? You humiliated me in front of them. Mom stood, holding up a hand like she was breaking up a fight between kids. Enough. John, you need to forgive her and move on. We all make mistakes. My jaw tightened. This isn't your decision, Mom. Maybe not, she said, her tone turning sharp. But I'm not going to watch you throw away a good woman because you can't let go of your pride. Your father agrees with me. That last line hit like a punch. Dad rarely weighed in on my personal life, which meant Mom had clearly been working the phones, getting the whole family involved. Emily stood up then, closing the distance between us. Please, she said softly, her eyes suddenly shimmering with tears. Can't we just go back to normal? I miss you. And for a second, just a second, I almost believed her. But then I caught something in her eyes, something calculating. It was the same look she gave me once when we were at a dinner party and she wanted me to play along with a story she was telling. Like this was all theater and I was just a prop. I stepped back. No, I said finally, my voice flat. You need to leave. Emily's tears stopped instantly. Fine, she said coldly, grabbing her purse. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you've lost. Mom gave me one last withering look before following her out. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I got a call from my boss. John, we need to talk, he said, sounding uneasy. Can you come into my office? When I got there, he closed the door behind me and handed me a printout. It was a series of screenshots, my private text messages with Emily from months ago, where we'd argued about her spending habits. Except someone had cherry-picked the worst ones, cut them out of context, and sent them to HR claiming I had anger issues. This came in anonymously, my boss said carefully. We're not taking action right now, but is everything okay at home? My blood went cold. There was only one person who had access to those texts. When I got home, I called Emily. Did you send my private messages to my job? I demanded. I don't know what you're talking about, she said sweetly. Don't lie to me. She laughed then, actually laughed. John, maybe you shouldn't have written such nasty things if you didn't want anyone to see them. They were private, I said through gritted teeth. They were mean, she shot back. I did you a favor. Maybe now you'll think twice before talking to me like that. For a long moment, I couldn't even speak. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. You crossed a line, I said finally. Or maybe, she said smugly, I just taught you a lesson. She hung up before I could reply. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at the wall until my vision blurred. This wasn't just about a fight anymore. This was war. She had tried to humiliate me publicly, turn my family against me, and now she was threatening my job. And the worst part? My family still didn't believe me. When I told Mom what she'd done, Mom said, John, you can't prove she sent those messages. Maybe someone hacked her phone. Someone hacked her phone just to get me in trouble at work? I asked incredulously. All I'm saying is, don't jump to conclusions, she said, her voice weary. You've always been so suspicious of people. That was the final straw. I realized then that no one was coming to save me. No one was going to take my side. If I wanted justice, if I wanted peace, I was going to have to take matters into my own hands. But I also knew something else. If I moved too soon, I'd look exactly like what they already believed, the hot-headed guy who overreacts and feels disrespected. No, I needed to wait. I needed to be patient. And as angry as I was, there was something strangely satisfying about that thought. Because for the first time since this all started, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. The days after Emily's little stunt with HR felt like wading through quicksand. Everything I did took twice as much energy, and every time my phone buzzed, I felt that knot in my stomach tighten. At work, people were polite but distant, like they'd read the report and didn't quite know how to look me in the eye anymore. I kept my head down, finished my projects, and left the office right at 5. At home, the silence was suffocating. I used to look forward to coming back to a warm light on the porch, Emily on the couch scrolling through her phone, music playing softly in the background. Now the house felt like an empty box. I'd sit at the kitchen table with the TV on just for noise, barely tasting the takeout I ordered. One night, I opened the family group chat to see what fresh nonsense was waiting for me. Sure enough, Mom had posted a smiling picture of herself with Emily at some farmer's market, captioned, "Just us girls." Laura chimed in immediately. "You two are the cutest." Then my cousin, "Tell John to stop being dramatic and come to Sunday dinner." I closed the app and set my phone face down on the table. It wasn't just that my family was siding with Emily. It was that they were doing it so publicly, like they were daring me to fight back. It was like they didn't even care how that picture would make me feel. That Sunday, I didn't go to dinner. Mom called me twice, then left a voicemail that said, "Fine, stay mad. You're only hurting yourself." I lay on the couch for a long time after that, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we had gotten here. I used to be the quiet, dependable son, the one who showed up to every barbecue, who fixed Dad's car when it broke down, who helped Laura move apartments 3 times in 4 years. And somehow, in just a few weeks, I'd become the villain of the family narrative. One night around midnight, I grabbed my keys and just drove. I didn't have a destination. I just needed to move, to get out of that house. I ended up at an all-night diner on the edge of town, sitting in a booth with a cup of burnt coffee. That's when the loneliness really hit me. Not just missing Emily, but missing before. Before the public humiliation, before the group chats, before the HR meeting that made me feel like I was standing on a trapdoor. I missed the version of myself who trusted people, who believed that his family had his back. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, came by and topped off my coffee. "Rough night?" she asked gently. "Rough month," I said, surprising myself. She just nodded like she understood, then left me alone. I sat there until 2 in the morning, just thinking. And for the first time, my thoughts weren't racing. They were sharp, clear. The truth was, I couldn't stay in this place. Not physically, not mentally. Every corner of that house still smelled like Emily's perfume. Every picture frame still held her smile. Even my own family felt like enemy territory now. The next day, I started small. I packed up her things, the sweaters in my closet, the mug she loved, the random shoes she always left by the door, and put them all in a box. I didn't text her to pick them up. I just put the box in the garage, out of sight. Then I started pulling back from my family. I muted the group chat. When Mom called, I let it go to voicemail. When Laura texted, I replied with short, neutral answers. No explanations, no fights, just distance. At first, it hurt. I'd pick up my phone automatically when it buzzed, then set it down again. But after a few days, the silence stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like peace. One evening, I sat down with a notepad and started writing. Not a letter, not a diary entry, a list. Every single thing Emily had done since that night at the restaurant. Publicly humiliated me in front of her friends. Walked out holding another guy's hand. Lied to my family about what happened. Showed up uninvited. Sent my private texts to my job. Laughed when I confronted her. By the time I finished, I had filled an entire page. Seeing it all laid out like that did something to me. It was no longer just a swirl of emotions I couldn't untangle. It was evidence. Facts. I flipped the page over and started a new list. This one was different. Get new locks. Clean out joint accounts. Talk to HR. Get everything documented. Collect any messages/screenshots. The list wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about control. About making sure the next move, whatever it was, belonged to me. The next morning, I called a locksmith. By the end of the day, I had new keys. 2 days later, I moved my money out of the joint savings account Emily and I had opened last year when we talked about maybe buying a house. It wasn't much, just a few thousand, but it was mine. When Mom found out, she called me in a fury. John, do you know how hurtful that is? Emily said she saw the account was empty. It's my money, I said flatly. You're acting vindictive. No, I said calm now. I'm acting careful. Mom huffed on the other end of the line. You can't just cut everyone off. Family is supposed to be there for you. Then maybe they should have been there for me when I needed them, I said, and hung up before she could reply. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I was still angry, still hurt, but now I had direction. And that was enough to keep me moving. After I changed the locks and moved the money, something in me loosened. It was subtle at first, but I felt taller when I walked into work. I spoke up in meetings again. I started wearing shirts that actually fit me instead of the baggy ones I'd been throwing on half awake. People noticed. My boss even stopped me in the hallway one day and said, "Glad to see you back to your old self, John. We were worried about you for a minute there." That comment stuck with me, not because of the words, but because of the look on his face. He wasn't looking at me like the guy with anger issues anymore. He was looking at me like someone he could count on. I took that and ran with it. At lunch that day, instead of eating at my desk, I went out to a local coffee shop with a couple of coworkers. I laughed more than I had in weeks. It felt good. I realized that while I'd been wrapped up in Emily and the family drama, I'd been neglecting these little parts of my life that made me feel human. At night, I started running again. Just a mile at first, then 2, then 3. There was something therapeutic about pounding the pavement with music blasting in my headphones, my breath coming in ragged gasps, sweat dripping down my back. I'd come home, shower, and feel like I'd burned off some of the anger clinging to me like smoke. One evening after a run, I caught sight of myself in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the guy staring back. My shoulders looked broader. My face wasn't as pale and drawn as it had been a few weeks ago. I looked solid, like someone who had been through fire and come out steel. Around this time, Emily must have sensed something was shifting because the tone of her messages changed. You seem different. Are you seeing someone? Your mom says you've been working late. Don't overdo it. Please just talk to me. We can fix this. I didn't reply. For once, her words didn't sting. They just sat there on the screen, powerless. Mom tried again too. John, I miss you. Can you come to dinner this weekend? No, I texted back simply. There was a time when that response would have been unthinkable. I used to bend over backward not to disappoint my family. But now, I was starting to realize that their approval wasn't the lifeline I thought it was. Instead of going to dinner that Sunday, I took a drive out to the lake. It was a crisp evening, the kind where the water looks like glass and the sky is streaked with orange. I sat on the hood of my truck and just breathed. I thought about everything that had happened. The restaurant, the intervention, the HR stunt. For weeks, those memories had felt like weights tied around my ankles. But now, I could think about them without feeling crushed. That's when the ideas started forming. Up until then, my planning had been about survival, securing my money, protecting my space, making sure Emily couldn't blindside me again. But sitting there by the lake, Watching the sun sink behind the trees, I realized I didn't just want to survive this. I wanted to win. Not in a petty way. Not just to get even. I wanted to make sure Emily and everyone who doubted me understood that I wasn't the pushover they thought I was. That night, I opened my laptop and started organizing everything I'd collected. Screenshots of her texts, notes about the restaurant night, the HR printouts with dates and times. I made folders, labeled them meticulously. It felt almost clinical, like I was building a case file. Then I started thinking bigger. What if I talked to HR proactively? Not just about the fake report, but about the fact that someone had tried to interfere with my job by sending private, out-of-context messages. That was a serious breach, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I felt. Not in a hot, uncontrolled way, but in that cold, precise way that sharpens you. The next morning, I asked for a meeting with HR. "Thank you for seeing me," I said when I sat down. I wanted to follow up about the complaint. The HR rep looked relieved, like they'd been hoping I'd do this. "Of course. We haven't taken any action. We were waiting to hear your side." I told them everything. Calmly. Factually. How the messages had been taken out of context. How they were from a personal dispute. How I believed they had been sent maliciously to damage my reputation at work. By the end of the meeting, the HR rep was nodding. "We'll document this," she said. "And if anything like this happens again, please let us know immediately. You have the right to a safe work environment." Walking out of that office, I felt 10 pounds lighter. It wasn't revenge, not yet, but it was a line in the sand. I started to notice other small changes in my life too. The friends I'd neglected started texting me again, asking if I wanted to grab drinks or catch a game. I said yes, and when I did, I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing, for the first time in months. It was like my world was slowly shifting back into color. One night, Laura called me out of the blue. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "You seem different," she said cautiously. "I am," I said simply. She was quiet for a second. "Emily says you still won't talk to her." "That's correct," I said, my tone even. "Are you going to forgive her?" I thought about that for a moment. "Forgiveness isn't off the table," I said slowly. "But trust? That's a whole different conversation." Laura didn't seem to know what to say to that. "You sound scary when you talk like that," she said finally, half joking. "Maybe I'm just done being the family doormat," I replied, and hung up before she could argue. By the time I ended that call, I realized something else. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Emily, not of my mom's disapproval, not of what anyone would say about me. And that freedom? It was addictive. Momentum is a funny thing. Once it's on your side, everything seems to line up in ways you didn't expect. A week after that call with Laura, I was at work finishing a report when I overheard two coworkers talking about an upcoming opening for a project lead position. I wasn't supposed to hear about it yet. The official posting hadn't gone live, but apparently the leadership team was already floating names. "John's been killing it lately," one of them said. "Wouldn't surprise me if he gets tapped for it." I sat there, pretending to type, heart hammering. I hadn't even known there was going to be a project lead spot opening up. It was a step up, more responsibility, better pay, and, most importantly, more influence in the company. Influence I could use. That night, I updated my internal portfolio, polished every metric I'd been quietly crushing for the past few months, and made sure my manager saw the numbers. He didn't say much at first, just nodded, but I noticed he forwarded my summary to someone higher up the same afternoon. While that was in motion, I kept building my case file at home. Every time Emily sent me a text, I screenshotted it. Every time a relative made a comment in the family group chat hinting that I was being difficult, I saved it. I even printed out the intervention photos I found later on social media. Yes, they'd taken a smiling selfie together before I came home that day, like the whole thing was some stage performance. The more I collected, the clearer the story became. Emily wasn't just impulsive or emotional. She was deliberate, calculated. She had tried to embarrass me, control the narrative, even mess with my career. And my family, whether by choice or out of sheer blindness, had played right into her hands. One Friday night, as I was going through the screenshots, I noticed something in the metadata of one of her messages. The text had been sent from a device that wasn't her usual phone. It was labeled as Emily iPad. Curious, I dug a little deeper and realized something that made me sit up straight. Months ago, when Emily and I were still good, I had set up a shared iCloud account for our streaming subscriptions, a dumb little convenience thing, so we wouldn't both be paying for Netflix. I had forgotten all about it. I opened the account on my laptop and, to my surprise, saw that her iPad was still linked and synced. Every photo, every message, every note. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Then, carefully, methodically, I started reading. What I found made my hands go cold. There were messages between her and the guy from the restaurant. Not just friendly ones, but explicit ones. Photos, even. Conversations where she joked about me, about my boring job and quiet little house. One message from the day after the restaurant incident made my blood run hot. He'll probably cry about it for a week, then come crawling back. He always does. But the part that really got me, the part that made something inside me lock into place, was a thread between her and my mother. Mom, he's not answering my calls again. Emily, he'll come around. He always does. Mom, I hope so. I told your parents you two are solid. I don't want to look foolish. Emily, trust me. I've got this. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. It wasn't just that Emily was playing me. My own mother was actively colluding with her to pressure me back into the relationship. They weren't just meddling. They were conspiring. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. I spent the rest of the night archiving everything. Not out of panic this time, but with precision. Dates, timestamps, context. I wasn't rushing. I was building something. Over the next few weeks, I kept my head down and played the part of the calm, collected John everyone expected. I answered work emails promptly, volunteered for extra tasks, even started showing up to Friday happy hours again. On the outside, I looked like a man who had moved on. On the inside, I was sharpening every tool I had. I made a quiet appointment with a lawyer, not because I was ready to file anything yet, but to understand my options. He told me that what Emily had done by sending my private texts to my employer could, under certain circumstances, be considered harassment or defamation, especially if it had put my job in jeopardy. I also learned that our joint savings account, which I had already emptied, was technically still open in both our names. If I hadn't moved the money, she could have drained it at any time and left me fighting to get it back. Good instincts, the lawyer said with a nod. Most people don't think that far ahead. That night, I drove home with the windows down, feeling the cool air whip across my face. It wasn't joy exactly, not yet, but it was something close. 2 weeks later, the promotion was official. Project lead. My name on the announcement email. A raise that bumped me into a new tax bracket. The first text that came in was from Emily. Congrats. I always knew you had it in you. Then my mom. See? Good things happen when you let go of grudges. Proud of you, honey. I didn't respond to either of them. Instead, I took a screenshot of the announcement and sent it to my lawyer with a short message. Let's talk about next steps. I had leverage now, professionally, financially, personally. I had evidence. I had control over my own story. And for the first time since that night at the restaurant, I had the upper hand. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was about to turn the tables. When I got the promotion, something shifted permanently. It wasn't just the bigger paycheck or the new title. It was the way people looked at me. Like I'd stepped into a different orbit entirely. My voice carried more weight at work. My suggestions were taken seriously. And suddenly, I was the guy people came to for answers. That power didn't go to my head, but it did give me clarity. I had spent months being on the defensive, trying to protect myself from Emily's chaos and my family's meddling. Now, it was my turn to act. The first step was subtle. I reached out to HR and asked if they could document formally that the anonymous complaint against me had been investigated, found baseless, and closed. They sent me a clean, stamped report the next day. I smiled when I slid it into my growing folder of evidence. Next, I contacted my lawyer again. We sat down in his office with all the screenshots, photos, and messages I had been collecting. He read through them carefully, occasionally raising an eyebrow or scribbling notes. You've been thorough, he said finally, closing the folder. Between the attempted character sabotage, the harassment, and the collusion with your family to pressure you, you have a solid basis for a cease and desist. Maybe even a civil claim if you wanted to pursue damages. Not yet, I said. I want to give her a chance to make her own mistakes first. He smiled at that, a slow, knowing smile. Then keep documenting. And when you're ready, we'll make it count. With the legal groundwork laid, I turned my focus to the social side of things. My family still thought I was sulking. They still posted photos with Emily on Facebook, tagged me in family memes, sent group messages as if nothing had happened. Instead of blowing up, I decided to starve the drama of oxygen. I quietly blocked Emily's number. I didn't announce it. I didn't make a scene. I just cut off her access to me entirely. The first time she tried to show up at my house again, she discovered the locks had been changed, and this time, I had cameras installed. I didn't even go to the door. I just watched from my office as she stood there, knocking harder and harder, before finally storming off. Later that night, she sent me an email, a long, emotional one about how she missed us and just wanted to talk. I archived it without replying and added it to the file. A week later, I ran into Laura at the grocery store. "You know Mom's upset, right?" she said, leaning on the cart handle. "Mom's been upset since I was 12, I said calmly, sliding a carton of eggs into my basket. Laura frowned. "Emily says you're ignoring her completely." "I am," I said simply. Laura blinked, caught off guard. "So that's it. You're just going to throw her away?" I turned to her then, looking her dead in the eye. "Laura, she tried to get me fired. She laughed about humiliating me. And you want me to just let that slide?" Laura looked down, clearly uncomfortable. "I didn't know about the job thing. Maybe you should have asked before taking sides," I said, my voice even. For once, she didn't have a comeback. By then, I could tell the narrative was starting to shift. My silence was unnerving them. The family group chat got quieter. Mom left me a voicemail saying she just wanted to make sure I was okay. Emily stopped posting those cheerful, passive-aggressive Instagram stories with captions like, "Healing takes time, red heart." And then, right on cue, she made her biggest mistake yet. I got a call from an unknown number one afternoon. When I answered, it was the guy from the restaurant, the one she'd left holding hands with that night. "Hey man," he said awkwardly. "You don't know me, but I think we should talk." About Emily. I stayed quiet, letting him fill the silence. She's been telling people you were abusive. Said you ruined her life after the breakup." My stomach twisted, but I kept my voice calm. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because she's been blowing up my phone for weeks, and when I told her I didn't want to see her anymore, she trashed my car. Heated up, smashed the mirror, the whole deal. I filed a police report. Thought you should know." When we hung up, I just sat there for a moment, letting the information settle over me like a heavy coat. Emily hadn't just kept pushing, she'd escalated into destroying other people's property. The next day, I called my lawyer again. "It's time," I said simply. We drafted a formal cease and desist letter that laid everything out in clinical, devastating detail. The public humiliation, the harassment, the anonymous complaint, the digital evidence tying the messages back to her device, and now the vandalism report from another victim. The letter made it clear that if she continued contacting me or spreading false claims, we would file for damages. When the letter was served to her, she must have gone ballistic, because within an hour my phone was blowing up with messages from my mom and Laura. "What did you do? Emily is hysterical. You can't just threaten her. John, this is too far." I didn't answer. Instead, I sent one text to the family group chat. Just one. "I have kept quiet for months while all of you believed a version of events that was never true. Emily humiliated me, tried to damage my career, and lied about me to my own family. I have the evidence, and if anyone wants to see it, I'll be happy to share it. Otherwise, this conversation is over." Then I muted the chat again. The silence that followed was deafening and beautiful. Over the next few days, I heard through the grapevine that Emily had deleted half her social media accounts. Mom stopped calling for almost a week. Laura texted me once to say, "I didn't know it was that bad. I'm sorry. It wasn't a public spectacle. I didn't post anything online or blast anyone on social media." But the message was clear. I wasn't the quiet, compliant John they could push around anymore. I had taken my power back, and I hadn't even raised my voice. Fallout is quieter than people think. It doesn't come with fireworks or shouting matches in parking lots. It comes with long silences, late-night phone calls that go unanswered, and the look on someone's face when they realize the story they've been telling isn't going to work anymore. After my cease and desist was served, Emily went completely silent for 3 days. Then, suddenly, she broke that silence with a single email, formal, short, and as cold as the legal letter she had received. "I acknowledge receipt of your notice. I will not contact you again." No apology. No attempt at reconciliation. Just the end of the line. When I read it, I felt something inside me unclench that I hadn't even realized was still tight. It was done. Whatever she had hoped to get out of this, whether it was power, control, or some twisted form of revenge, it was over. But the real fallout came from my family. That Sunday, I got a text from Laura. "Can you come over to Mom's? She wants to talk." I debated ignoring it, but something told me to go. Not for them, for me. When I walked into the house, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, looking older than I'd ever seen her. She didn't get up when I came in. "John," she said softly. I read the letter. I said nothing, waiting. I didn't realize how far things had gone. I thought she just made a bad joke that night. I didn't know she tried to hurt your job. "You didn't want to know?" I said calmly, setting my keys on the counter. "You wanted to believe the version where I was the problem because that was easier." Mom flinched at that, but she didn't argue. "You could have told me," she said after a pause. "I did," I replied evenly. "You just didn't believe me." She sat back in her chair, and for once, she looked small. "I'm sorry," she said finally, and I could tell it cost her something to say it. "I thought I was helping." "You weren't," I said, but my tone wasn't angry now. Just tired. "You chose her over me. All of you did. And I'm not going to let that happen again." Laura was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her face pale. "We messed up," she said quietly. "I should have had your back." I nodded once. "You should have." There was a long silence. For years, I'd been the one to fill silences, to smooth things over, to be the peacemaker. This time, I let it sit. Finally, Mom asked, almost timidly, "So what now?" I picked up my keys. "Now, I live my life. You can be part of it if you respect it. If not, I'll be fine." I left before they could say anything else. In the weeks that followed, I kept to myself. Not out of spite, just because I was busy. My new role at work was challenging, but it felt good to be challenged. I started saving for a down payment on a new place, somewhere fresh, somewhere that didn't carry the ghost of late-night fights and slammed doors. Then, one Friday evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Thought you'd like to know, Emily moved out of town. Lost her job. She's staying with her aunt in another state." It was from the guy from the restaurant. I stared at the message for a long moment, then put the phone back in my pocket without replying. There was no satisfaction in knowing her life had fallen apart. Not really. What satisfied me was knowing it wasn't my problem anymore. A month later, I hosted a small cookout at my place for a few coworkers and friends. We grilled burgers, played music, laughed late into the night. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Toward the end of the night, Laura showed up. She looked nervous, holding a six-pack like a peace offering. "Can I stay?" she asked. I nodded, and she joined us in the backyard. Later, as the crowd thinned and we were putting out the last of the candles, she said quietly, "I'm proud of you, for not letting them break you." I smiled at that, a small, genuine smile. Me too. When everyone had left and the yard was quiet again, I sat on the porch with the last beer of the night, watching the smoke from the grill curl into the dark sky. I thought about that night at the restaurant, about the look on Emily's face when she called me a loser, about the months of silence, the plotting, the evidence folder sitting in my desk drawer. And for the first time, the memory didn't sting. It didn't feel like a wound anymore. It felt like a scar, proof that I had been through hell and come out the other side. I raised the bottle slightly, like a private toast to the night sky, and said quietly to no one, "Never again." Then I smiled, finished my drink, and went inside, leaving the past where it belonged.